Modern role-playing games aren't what they used to be. Games like Deus Ex, The Bard's Tale, and Fallout are all-time classics and have aged extremely well today. Okay, well, parts of them have.
Aw, man.
Most importantly is their emphasis on player choice. That's what really set RPGs apart from any other genre at the time, that and their mind-boggling depth. You felt like you were actually in those worlds, making big decisions that completely changed everything, and you could play the games however you wanted. Today, well, that's not really the case anymore. I'm not one of those people who rails about how games aren't as good as they used to be, blah blah blah. In fact, I'm quite the opposite. I've always said that, by and large, games are better today than ever before. But one place I cannot argue about this is with RPGs. The popular examples of today, Skyrim, Fallout 4, Mass Effect Andromeda, even The Witcher 3 to an extent, all lack the depth and complexity of their forefathers. This is partially a good thing. Sometimes these games were just kind of too much, you know? But these new games, they're pretty much just really long action games, devoid of any real meaningful player choice in gameplay or narrative, just giving you the illusion of choice. Fallout 4 in particular being the biggest offender, with your only real choice being who do you want to stand next to when you blow up the Institute, and do you want to shoot this guy in the face or stab him in the face? I'm not the only one who feels this way either. Many in the indie community have taken it upon themselves to bring back classic RPGs, especially Fallout, minus the name of course. Modders have had the same thought too, but that's another video. One such indie developer is Atom Team, who took to Kickstarter in April 2017 to bring us their Fallout spiritual successor, Atom RPG. I've already talked about this game when it entered early access back in December, when I still had hopes and dreams. Well, the game is still in early access, but it seems to be rapidly approaching a final release, with all kinds of issues being fixed and new content added. So what do you say we take a look at this lovely post-apocalyptic? Atom RPG is, like I said, a Fallout-inspired role-playing game where, you know what? Why don't I let my older self give us a quick rundown on what Atom RPG is? Or my younger self, whatever. It's clearly nailed the Fallout aesthetic with its top-down camera, UI elements, and dialogue presentation. It looks like a modern-day Fallout game, at least in terms of that presentation. Managing your thirst, hunger, and sleep is compulsory. You also have to keep an eye on your radiation levels as well. You're robbed at the very start of the game, leaving you with pretty much nothing but an empty canteen and a vague idea of what you're supposed to be doing. The rest is completely up to you. The game doesn't really keep track of your quests, telling you only the top-level objective, leaving you to figure out what to do next, where to go, and even remembering what you're supposed to be doing at any given time. Aside from that, it's the typical Fallout thing, really the typical RPG thing. You wander around a desolate wasteland interacting with communities and finding enemies, you pick stuff up and you put it in your inventory, you get experience points and level up, all that kind of stuff. The lore follows real history for the most part, including the fall of the Soviet Union, only instead of the Soviet Union actually falling, it instead just kinda started a nuclear war with the United States. What always made Fallout stand out, though, was the writing, the characters that emerged from it, and the emphasis on player choice. It's hard to see at times, but Atom RPG flashes some of that same brilliance. Without spoiling too much, there's a quest early on in the game in which you're asked by a mayor of a town to find a spy who's working for a nearby group of bandits. You end up meeting these bandits and find out that it's not quite as cut and dry as the town folks will have you believe. There's no black and white morality like you'd find in a Bethesda Fallout game. And also something you wouldn't find in a modern Bethesda Fallout game is the ability to complete the quest in multiple ways. Yes, you can side with either the town or the bandits, sure, but there are a plethora of options in between. It's because of this, and the other quests like it, that I feel like, at its core, Atom RPG has the makings of a great game. The problem is, it can sometimes be really, really hard to see it. Adam RPG had a lot going for it, but it was unquestionably rough around the edges with the poorly translated writing, frustratingly random combat, and mediocre visuals. But the quest structure and the player freedom made up for its shortcomings, reminding me of classic Fallout, which is the point. Since then, Adam team have been hard at work turning out a whopping 11 patches and major updates since I first looked at the game. And, what's that noise? That's right, it's time to play Name That Update, where you have to guess what features were added or fixed in various updates over the course of early access. Are you ready to play? I don't care. Submit your answers in the comments below and we'll see what you've come up with. But first, a word from our sponsors. Squarespace. Tired of our ads? Well, start using our website and we can stop screaming at you about it, assholes. And Audible. Who wants to read books anymore? Okay, we're back. Let's see what you've come up with. Let's see here. First up, an updated automatic movement system. Okay, not what I would have went with first. Rebalanced combat. Yep, that is on the board. New towns, quests, perks, and NPCs. That's 4 right there. A new English translation. I guess all your bases don't belong to us after all. And finally, bug fixes. Congratulations! You went 8 for 8! You've won me not doing this stupid bit anymore. Let's talk about the game, shall we?
The atomic flame, unleashed by the leaders of the East and West, like a genie from his bottle, circled the globe in a mere minutes and devoured it to the bone.
One of the first things you'll notice when you boot the game up is that it's just generally nicer. The graphics are slightly better, not that you'll notice in this video because my computer hates this game. There are 2 opening cutscenes now that set the stage and fill you in on what the game is actually about. Movement feels faster and more fluid, as does equipping and unequipping items from your inventory and camera controls. I lumped those 2 together for some reason. The combat isn't so random anymore, and the new English translation is a much needed upgrade over the gibberish I played when the game first launched into early access. There are some caveats though. Many of these additions and improvements bring with them their own flaws. For starters, the voice acting in the opening cutscene isn't great. You can tell English isn't the actor's first language, and they constantly trip up on their own lines. I don't know what a genie out of bottle means, nor am I familiar with the year 2005. Even beyond that, they sound like they're kinda bored anyway, like how I do in a lot of my videos. If you remember from our previous video on the game, which I'm sure you don't, the biggest problem with Adam RPG was the writing, or more specifically, the translation. While the translation has been greatly improved, I'm sorry to say it's the dialogue that still remains the game's biggest problem. Now, I don't know if the problem is the translation, or that it's just not very well written, or both. Like I said, this new translation is a huge improvement. You can actually understand most of what the characters are saying now, but sometimes certain phrases are oddly worded or otherwise stiff, awkward, and clunky. Like, remember the bartender from the last video who I asked if he had any jobs for me and he said no, only to then offer me a job when I tried to walk away? Yeah, he still does that. Can't say if they were in the military though. But they had some serious-looking dudes. Good weapons on them, and their attitude was pretty militant. They were even wearing uniforms of sorts. Some serious guys, I tell you. Real serious. That was the worst Russian accent in the world, I'm sorry. Maybe you could bring it for me from the city. It's already been paid for, and I will pay you for your troubles. Comrade, woman, by any chance are you here to fix our water tower? It's an old dilapidated factory. Hell if I know what they made here. Bricks, I think. Now it's our base of operations. Our little army here. Between our valiant attempts to rescue local villages from all kinds of troubles. Doesn't quite live up to the standards of Fallout, does it? That being said, there are a couple of additions and improvements you'll notice the moment you start the game. Before, it was hard to tell what you were supposed to be doing, other than tracking down some general. Now, you get 2 opening cutscenes explaining the setup, and while the voice acting in them isn't great, they do a good job of immersing you in the story, giving you a much better idea of who you are, why you're trying to track this guy down, and what happened to the world, and the challenges you'll face along the way. It might not sound like much, but actually knowing what's going on in the world and what your main goal is makes it so much easier to invest in the story. Another addition is in character creation, specifically the distinctions. Sadly, you still can't customize your appearance, only change your gender, your accompanying portrait and name, that's it. However, under the hood, there are a lot of options. There are 3 tiers worth of stats, only 2 are available by last played. You have your characteristics, which are basically your main special skills from Fallout. These govern your strength, endurance, luck, personality, the usual. All 7 of these stats start at 5, and you have 5 additional points to increase certain stats, or you can lower some to raise others. Next, you have more general skills. These make up your more specialized skills, such as first aid, sneaking, gambling, etc., and you have 20 points to freely assign to these. The new addition, distinctions, are your traits from Fallout. They're all a double-edged sword in that they boost some stats while lowering others, like Anabolics Fan, which will give you +1 strength and let you carry 15 extra kilograms, but -1 dexterity and -1 intellect. What's really great about this system is that they all tie in together really well, and you can see right there how your choices will affect your overall stats. But this isn't without its flaws too. Some of the distinctions don't really make a ton of sense, like Child Prodigy, that gives you +1 intellect, but means you gain less experience because you supposedly learn new things slower. And then there's Cursed Sniper, which gives you -5 sequence, but sequence isn't listed anywhere on the stat screen, and isn't explained at all what it is. Still, this stat screen is close to perfect, because every stat here is useful to some degree, which is something that not even Fallout can say. Did anyone use the survival skill in that game? Anyone at all? Yeah, no, I didn't think so. Here, all of that stuff is much better woven into the game, so it actually matters, and best of all, Atom RPG isn't afraid to tell you no. No, your lockpicking isn't high enough, so you can't get into this room. Sorry. That's something where modern Fallout would pat you on the head and say, "Oh, there, little Timmy, it's okay. Here's a key for that room, literally 2 feet away from the door." Your choices will come into play right away, as the start of the game is still the same. You get robbed immediately and are left with nothing unless you can successfully talk your assailants into leaving you at least something, an empty canteen in my case, but you can also try and fight them off, which is sadly a supposed to lose fight. Or, my favorite option, you can just say, "Fuck it, take my stuff and get it over with already." From the hour or so that I played, the quests are still as nuanced as they were before. There's no black and white morality options here, and you still have the option of completing quests in multiple ways, using your stats to your advantage. Those 2 factors alone made the game worth the price of admission, seeing as how Bethesda's version of Fallout is a good versus evil, shoot everything in the face until you win kind of game. But better still is there's actually a difference between male and female characters now. When playing as a woman, I stumbled across a guard in the first town who was shy and awkward with me, flirting with me by giving me a flower and telling me how lonely he was. That didn't happen when I was playing a male character. The combat feels a little better as well, with low-level creatures no longer ganging up on you and killing you in 2 or 3 hits, and decent weapons to find relatively early on that feel impactful. It can still be a little random at times, but I think that's more to do with the turn-based nature of these kind of RPGs in general and the random number generating stuff as opposed to Atom RPG itself. These are all small things, but it's the small details that really make games like this feel special. Now, aside from a few little things and bug fixes, I wouldn't say much has been changed with Atom RPG. More like a lot has been added, like quests and new characters and things like that. What was great is still great, and what didn't work has been improved, but not by much. There are some problems here and there that I think we'll just have to accept will always be there, like the translation issues or the janky animations and bland graphics. But if you can get past that, there is a lot to love here if you're a fan of old school Fallout. Remember, the game is still in early access, so I didn't want to dive in too deep. They can always fix the writing and the graphics and animations and all of the game's current problems, but right now, I gotta say, despite its rough edges, I absolutely love Atom RPG, and I can't wait to see what it looks like in its final form. Whenever that happens, be sure to come back to Clickus for our full review, where I definitely will be diving in deeper.